Good evening, Hatters. Hello. I am so glad to have you joining us this evening. For those of you who do not know me, my name is Rena Tovar Arroyo, and I am the Assistant Vice President for Development for Parent and Alumni Engagement. Tonight we have so many wonderful Hatters joining us this evening. We're so glad you're here. I was really excited when I reviewed the guest list and I saw that we have some terrific Stetson friends with us this evening on the call. We are waiting for our attendees to pop in. We'll get started in just a minute. As we wait for more to join us, we're going to do a fun little poll that we'd like you to participate in so we know who is with us this evening. So we're going to have Megan pop up the poll. So for Hatter alumni, which college or school did you graduate from? And if you're a Hatter parent, please indicate which college or school will or did your student graduate from. So are you College of Law, College of Arts and Sciences, School of Business, or School of Music? So if you can mark your choices, and then Megan will pop up the results for us here shortly. Okay, great. All right, so we have 18% College of Law, 73% College of Arts and Sciences in the house tonight, School of Business, hopefully some more will join us, and School of Music. Welcome everybody. So what we're going to do now, we still have a few more joining us in the room there. So what we'd like you to do is to locate the chat box in your webinar function, and we want our Hatter alumni to please type in the class year that you graduated from Stetson. And our Hatter parents, please type in the class year that your student graduated or is going to graduate from Stetson so we can see who is with us. So give out a shout out to your class year for us in the chat box. We'll see who's with us tonight. All right, 1983, 2001. Very good, welcome. 1996, 2004. Got some more coming, 2021. Excellent, great year. All right, got some 21s, some more in the 90s and the 80s and the 70s. Very good, okay, excellent. Oh, we have one from 1958, welcome. That's really great, so excited. All right, so thanks everybody for sharing a little bit about yourselves. We're gonna have some fun tonight with Dr. Roelke and our panelists. So this evening's webinar is a really great opportunity for you in the Hatter Nation to get to know our new president. Some of you submitted questions when you registered for this event, so we will start with those questions, and then you also have the opportunity to send questions throughout the webinar using that same chat box that you just used to put your class year in. So we're going to go ahead and get started. So there are going to be a few other panelists on the webinar with us tonight who are going to give a very short welcome and quick update. And so first of all, we will have Mike Casey, who is the Associate Director of Alumni Relations from our College of Law, joining us. We will have Raynell Tinsley Mason, the class of 2000 and current Alumni Board President. We will have Tara Hamilton, our Executive Director of University Development Initiatives. And of course, please give a warm Hatter welcome to Stetson's 10th president, Dr. Christopher F. Roelke, who became our president on July 1st, 2020. Welcome, Dr. Roelke.
Rena, thank you very much, and thanks also to the other colleagues on the call. I appreciate you being here. Good evening, Hatters, and thanks for tuning in to this presidential meet and greet. This is the 6th of 7 presidential meet and greets, and I so appreciate your continued engagement with Stetson. We need you now more than ever. As like most institutions of higher education, we are being confronted with a once-in-a-century set of challenges. However, it's going to be no surprise to you that as Hatters, we meet these challenges head on, and we meet them head on with kindness, with empathy, and with shared ownership, and most certainly with a collaborative spirit. These meet and greets have been part of an overall communication strategy during this unprecedented context. And these sessions have been actually coupled with 13 consecutive weeks of webinars with our communities in both DeLand and in Gulfport. We have held these webinars in an effort to keep our community informed in real time of developments associated with Stetson's COVID-19 response, our preparations for the 2020 election, our experiences within intercollegiate athletics, our partnerships with local public health officials, Stetson's commitment to diversity and inclusion in light of considerable national, regional, and Stetson-based unrest around racial justice, and also more broadly, how are our students, faculty, and staff experiencing life at Stetson in the context of a global pandemic? In some cases, I believe Stetson has succeeded far beyond expectations. In other cases, we have struggled or maybe even fallen short and have had to rethink our strategies, our deployment of resources, and even our collective vision moving forward. Today also marks my 99th day officially as Stetson's president, 72nd day if you take out the weekends. And I want to reaffirm for our community and for our alums and parents out there that despite our challenges, I could not be more proud of how, in true Hatter fashion, our community here in DeLand and at the College of Law, how we have collaborated, how we have adapted, and how we have persevered under, frankly, very trying circumstances. As my 100th day as Stetson's president is in fact upon us, I also want to report that I have learned a tremendous amount about our communities through what I've been calling my accelerated listening and learning tour, which has included engagement with faculty, staff, students, alumni, trustees, broader Volusia community, and colleagues at the College of Law. These observations are also informed by recent data analyses, including but not limited to the Campus Climate Survey, which we just released the second iteration of that a week or so ago, faculty surveys, review of documentation from what we call the so-called Deltona meetings. I will keep my remarks brief as we do want to hear from our other colleagues, and I will have further remarks in a moment, but I do hope you'll indulge me for just a second on some of my initial observations during my ongoing accelerated listening and learning tour. And it's also included, of course, these virtual sessions with Stetson alumni and others in Washington, in Atlanta, in Florida, New York, as well as those alums living in the Eastern, Central, Pacific, and Mountain time zones. So here it goes. I'm pleased to report that Stetson has generally, but I believe very importantly, embraced our themes of kindness, empathy, and agency in an exceptionally challenging environment. This environment is challenging residentially, it's challenging educationally, and it certainly is challenging economically. Due to careful and thorough planning and frankly compliance, Stetson has thus far performed far better than anticipated in the institution's response to the COVID-19 pandemic. However, I also want to be honest, considerable anxiety and public health concerns persist at Stetson, and they persist nationally. And we must remain vigilant in mitigating the transmission of this virus, particularly as we start to open up a bit more at Stetson, and as we hope to enter further tiers in our COVID-19 response. Both external and internal events centered on racial justice have amplified voices from divergent socio-political perspectives. The uncertainty of the upcoming 2020 election is complicating this context considerably. I'm also pleased to report that through my accelerated listening and learning tour, Stetson absolutely enjoys a positive and collaborative relationship with our local communities, as evidenced by open communication and cooperation with local and regional health providers and officials, city and county government, and local law enforcement. In addition, ample field work and community-based learning opportunities, though certainly limited currently by COVID, bolster Stetson's strong relationship with local partners. In my view, this is a demonstrable strength of Stetson, and building on this momentum is a very strong interest shared among our faculty, staff, and students, and it is something that I'm personally very deeply passionate about and hope to enhance during my time as Stetson's president. And finally, despite considerable efforts over time to promote equity and inclusion, the data analyses and the associated narratives point at Stetson to some differential experiences based on a number of demographic characteristics, most notably race and gender, and also perhaps employment category. On this front, we are continuing our robust discussions with students, faculty, staff, and local area partners to move Stetson forward, and I'm completely optimistic about our future together. Though that, in short, are my comments to kick us off here on this webinar. I hope that if I've stimulated some questions with these brief opening remarks, that you'll go ahead and place them in the chat bar. Now I'd love to turn it over to my colleague at the College of Law. Mike?
Greetings. Thank you, President Roelke. I am going to blame my previous appearance prematurely on my eagerness to talk to our alumni. So I heard my name and punched the button a little early. So for that, I apologize. But I'm Mike Casey. I'm the Assistant Director of Alumni Relations here at the College of Law. Dean Alexandre sends her regrets. She's not able to be here tonight. She did have another commitment and is disappointed that she can't be with you. Although I do want to thank everybody for being here, I do especially want to thank and say hello to our College of Law grads. And before I give a brief campus update, I do want to just take a moment to recognize President Roelke for his strong leadership during what has been really at times a tumultuous and dynamic period for the university. I know that he's been working extremely long hours to ensure that our campuses are safe and that classes and learning continued undisrupted. And for that, we're very thankful. He's also been doing all of that while promoting a culture of empathy, civility, and kindness. And remember that kindness word, I'm sure it'll come up again here later. So my hat's off to you, President Roelke. Professor Bowman always teaches her students here on the College of Law campus to have 3 points anytime they're giving a presentation. So I'm going to take her advice tonight, and I will keep these brief. But the first point here is we have several new key faculty positions that have been filled over the summer, and those folks are here and in action now. So we welcome Professor Elizabeth Bowles, who is the new director of our top-ranked Center for Excellence and Advocacy. She has a big shoes to fill from the person that was in her role previously, but I've met with her several times, and I assure you that she is suited well for the job. Also, Professor Roy Bayeste is the new director of the Law Library. Welcome him. And Professor Alicia Jackson is our new director of Academic Success and Bar Prep. So if you're an alum of the law school, we'll be sending out introductory videos here in a couple of weeks. So you'll have actually a chance to get to know those new faculty members. My second point, we started a new business law concentration. So all of our JD students can participate in this. It's very similar to our elder law and environmental law concentrations. It has a focus on commercial law, taxation, and international business. So we're very pleased about that, and we continue to focus and concentrate in the area of business law. And then finally, I know that tonight's audience is all out of state, but with most of our students graduating and taking the Florida bar, as you may know, there have been some hiccups with that. It got postponed until October 13th, and we have been working double time advocating for our students, or recent alumni actually, with the bar. And also supporting them where we can. The dean sent a letter out recently to all of our alumni to encourage them to hire our recent graduates, and also I know that this will come up as well, but here at the College of Law we have a Stetson Law emergency fund that is solely to benefit those folks. So glad that you could join us this evening, and with that I will turn it back over to Rena.
Thanks, Mike. We really appreciate you and your leadership at the College of Law. Now we're going to have a quick update on our parents and alumni engagement activities and the Alumni Board from Raynell Tinsley Mason, class of 2000, and our current Alumni Board president and my good friend. Welcome, Raynell.
Hi, good evening. Thank you, Rena, so much. It's very nice of you. Good evening, everyone. Thanks for being here. I'm going to take this opportunity to give you a brief update from the Alumni and Parent Engagement Office, as well as the Alumni Board. So as you can imagine, we were all really excited with the new year for Stetson starting to travel the country and see each of you in person. Alas, COVID affected all of us. So with safe social distancing parameters in place, the Alumni and Parent Engagement Office has launched a series of digital events and programs to help our Hatter alumni and parents stay engaged and connected. These virtual events give you easy access to learn, connect, and engage with one another, and also to opportunities to help and support current students. These activities and events are promoted every Sunday on our social accounts, so make sure you give us a follow. Right now, we'll go ahead and put the URLs in the question box. We have an Instagram and a Facebook, and also our Alumni Board website. The Meadows office, or excuse me, the Meadows Alumni House, the door is always open. Though currently it's virtual, it's still always open. So do reach out to us anytime that you have any questions. Remember, you are among Stetson's Hatter network, which is 42,000 alumni strong. Now, if you'll allow me to quickly review some of the upcoming programs. First, we have upcoming is our virtual homecoming, November 6th through the 8th. We'll have activities and events this year, which will include a dean's panel, academic, multicultural, athletic, and social virtual workshops. And of course, time to reminisce with old friends. If you're a class year that ends in 0 or 5, we'll also be celebrating you with your class reunions virtually. Don't forget to join us for a nostalgic kickoff concert on Thursday, November 5th to launch the weekend of events. Certainly more information will be sent out. It's going to be posted on our website and also our social media accounts, so stay tuned. It'll be coming out very shortly. Next, we have our Leadership Stetson. This is at the end of January 2021. If you're like me, you want 21 to be here as fast as possible. With that in mind, this program is designated to increase the number of Stetson alumni and parents actively engaged with the university and to develop the next generation of Stetson leadership. Participants have the chance to learn more about Stetson, including the internal and external forces that affect the university's direction. There is also a dean's panel discussion with the university administrators, faculty, and students, and a chance to participate in discussions about Stetson's future. All of this while networking with fellow alumni and parents. There is a nomination and application process for this Leadership Stetson. So if you're interested in applying, please reach out to the Alumni and Parent Engagement Office today, or even myself. Love to hear from you. Next is our Alumni Board. The Alumni Board is comprised of members representing various class years, majors, backgrounds, professions, and geographic areas. And we have new members rotating onto the board each and every year. The mission of the board is to promote and develop enduring relationships between alumni and the university while fostering loyalty and philanthropic support. If this is of interest to you, please also reach out to the alumni office or to me. Be glad to hear from you and give you more information if you are interested. And now I'd like to introduce Tara Hamilton, the Executive Director of University Initiatives.
Thank you, Renelle. Hello, everyone. Welcome. Glad you're here with us tonight. I'm excited to briefly share with you some good news as it relates to our recent fundraising success, and we all can use some good news right now. So around this time last year, we were celebrating the completion of our 7-year Beyond Success to Significance campaign. We raised over $218 million, which vastly exceeded our $200 million goal. It was really something to celebrate. I'm just going to mention a few of the most recent highlights that our generous donors helped us to accomplish. During the campaign, we received the single largest gift in Stetson history, $18 million for the new CC and Hyatt Brown Hall for Health and Innovation. These are a few of the renderings of the new building that will sit adjacent to Sage Hall. The Carlton Union building was beautifully renovated and expanded by 40%. I think the Cub is a wonderful example of blending our historical architecture with modern design to meet the needs of today's students. And if you're wondering in that upper left picture, if that's a water feature behind the Cub, you're correct. Troy and Sissy Templeton made this colorful fountain possible. I've heard some people refer to it more of a splash pad rather than a fountain, but either way, it looks very inviting on a hot Florida day. We endowed the Edmonds Scholarship Program, which is our prestigious full-ride academic scholarship. Donors endowed our joint College of Law and undergraduate civil rights travel course, where students actually meet and walk in the footsteps of the Freedom Riders. And we enhanced our Jewish campus community with the dedication of the newly remodeled Jeffrey and Diane Ginsburg Hillel House. In the campaign, we raised $18.8 million for Stetson Athletics. This includes the new athletic training center and the addition of beach volleyball, lacrosse, and the return of Hatter football. The Sandra Stetson Aquatic Center was made possible by John B. Stetson's granddaughter and is home to the Institute for Water and Environmental Resilience, as well as our men's and women's rowing teams. And speaking of John B. Stetson, he now resides in the heart of campus thanks to another gift from the Templetons. It's the perfect place for a photo op while you're visiting, or of course, a selfie. And finally, over the past several months, we've asked Hatter Nation to support our students most affected by the pandemic. Between the Law and DeLand campuses, donors large and small, as well as private foundations, have given over $644,000. For that, we say thank you. Our hats are off to you, Hatters. We would not be the university we are today without the support of all of you. As we look beyond the challenges of 2020, we know that affordability and access will continue to be top of mind for students and their families. So we hope you will continue supporting student scholarships as well as the Stetson Fund. And if you are able, please consider another gift to one of our COVID student emergency funds. There are still many students in need as the repercussions of the pandemic continue. So thank you again for your continued support, and we look forward to seeing you again in person next time. And now I'm going to turn it back over to President Roelke.
Tara, Rena, Mike, Ronell, thank you so much for your presentations. I'd like to now just take you through a few slides, if I may, and then we'll open up to what I think is the heart and soul of these meet and greets, which is the opportunity for you to ask any questions that are on your mind. Please do use the chat box to ask questions, and we'll get to that in just a moment. First, let me reflect and say that I described the Stetson community at Convocation this year as scrappy, tenacious, resilient, and caring. And I think that's absolutely true about Hatter Nation. Again, I don't want to continue to dwell on the context that we're in, but this has been pretty tough. But the Stetson community has rallied around each other, tremendous focus on public health and safety. And again, this is a tenacious, scrappy, caring, empathetic, collaborative community, and I couldn't be more pleased. The COVID-19 pandemic response. Let me say this, that I also had the great privilege, even when I was still living in New York, last year, and certainly at the start of 2020. Since February, I was deeply engaged, even though I wasn't yet the president, with the senior leadership team, with student leadership, with faculty, and with staff in preparing our COVID-19 pandemic response. So I feel very fortunate that I was immersed in sort of decision-making very early on, again, even before I became the president. And I think the pandemic response at Stetson, a couple of very key decisions were made. One was that we are going to provide agency, meaning that faculty could choose, based on the public health context, how it was they were going to deliver their instruction. We gave that same agency to students. If they were not feeling comfortable coming to Florida, which at that time was the epicenter of the pandemic in the United States, they could choose to engage with us virtually. That agency, I think, was very well received. That opportunity for agency was very well received by members of our community. We also permitted those that could do so to work remotely, again, trying to mitigate the transmission of the virus. The second big decision we made in terms of our response was to go to single occupancy residential living. That was a significant investment that we were making to try to keep our campus safe. I'm pleased to report that although we had 1,600 beds that we could fill with single occupancy, we had a wait list of over 300 who wanted to be on campus, which I think speaks volumes, absolute volumes about the quality of the education that our students receive at Stetson, and also frankly points to the importance of the residential components of our education. So we ended up housing a number of our students in local area hotels that wanted to be on campus and near campus. That also proved to be very, very useful because when we did have an early spike in the transmission of the virus, we had full capability to fully isolate and provide care to our students who were in fact on campus. I could not be more pleased with our performance with regard to mitigation of the virus. We have regular testing events on campus, both antigen testing and PCR testing. Students, staff, and faculty have been incredibly compliant with mask wearing, hand washing, watching social distance, and watching group size. As a result, if you follow the Safer Stetson website, we right now have 6 people on our campus that have in fact identified as positive with COVID-19, but they are healthy and well. We've had just one trip to the hospital, and that trip was short-lived because the person came right back. So not only are we mitigating the transmission of the virus, when we do have someone that thus far has come down with the virus, so far, thankfully, they have not gotten seriously ill. Again, I could not be more proud of the way the Stetson community has responded. We have about 56% of our students that are taking classes in hybrid or virtual format, and about 44% that are face-to-face, and we're currently involved in the planning for the spring 2020 semester. Racial justice and our campus climate study. As I said in my opening remarks, the socio-political context in the United States, and certainly here in Central Florida, is a volatile one. And in true Hatter fashion, we don't shy away from those issues. We try to tackle them head on. Stetson just released the results of its second iteration of the campus climate survey, the first one being in 2016. We had release of those findings at both the College of Law and on the DeLand campus. And we have an open forum next week for students and members of our community to talk through those findings and to also have plenty of access to the new president. I've had robust conversations with the Multicultural Student Council, with the Black Student Association, and most certainly with our colleagues that are so dedicated to work in diversity and inclusion. Needless to say, all institutions of higher education have had to think creatively in terms of resource allocation. I don't mind sharing with you that just before I became the president, the budget that was approved by our Board of Trustees was $16.8 million less than anticipated. And that was because of some projected dips in enrollment, some expenses that we needed to incur to keep our community safe, such as improving ventilation in our classrooms, buying PPE, engaging with local health partners, providing for testing at no charge to our students, et cetera, et cetera. I'm pleased to report that because we performed better in enrollment than we thought we would, and especially particularly in the graduate school and at the law school, and we saw much less melt than we anticipated at the undergraduate level, that we were able to restore the pay reductions that were targeted to start on September 1st. We still have had to take considerable sacrifices at Stetson, including the suspension of retirement benefits for everyone that works at Stetson, both on the DeLand campus and at the College of Law. And of course, our operational budgets have been cut considerably. Despite those budget cuts and the difficult environment we're in, it has not dampened the spirit at Stetson. We have a tent pitched outside here at the President's house in order to have classes conducted safely. And I always pop out there to say hello to the classes and to introduce myself to the students. And almost universally, they take a moment to say, thank you for letting us come back. And what they mean by that is that they really want to be here. They really want to be here. They know there are risks associated with this pandemic. They know that the instruction is not precisely what they had anticipated, but they are so, in fact, grateful to be here. And I think, again, that speaks volumes to the Stetson education. I'm going to be very simplistic when I talk about 2021 priorities, and I hope you'll join me in agreeing that these are the right ones. First and foremost, we are laser laser focused on keeping our communities healthy and safe during this unprecedented context. While that's overly simplistic, I think it's absolutely the right priority for our community, and it enables us to move our students toward their degrees despite a global pandemic. Number one priority is promoting the health and safety of those that work at Stetson and those that study at Stetson. We also have considerable ambitions in terms of making our community more inclusive and to make sure that our communities, not only are our particular communities and individual communities, their needs being met, that we still, despite a pandemic, provide ample opportunities for multicultural exchange, all toward the goal of engaged pluralism. And despite our physically distant situation here, we're making progress in that regard. The future opportunities at Stetson are considerable. The aforementioned new, most ambitious capital project we've ever undertaken, the Hyatt and CC and Hyatt Brown Hall for Science and Innovation. We hope to break ground on that this spring. Again, a very ambitious project. Connected to that project is the renovation of Sage Hall, another $10 million commitment that we're making to the improvement of those spaces. So those are certainly opportunities that we hope alumni will continue to be engaged in. We're very eager to think about ways in which we can provide better spaces for the performing arts at Stetson. We have a world-class, and I mean world-class, School of Music, but our facilities don't match the esteem with which that school is held. So we have lots and lots of capital projects that are ahead of us. And also, most importantly, you can imagine with the escalating cost of higher education, we need to be steadfast in our commitment to making a higher education possible and accessible for an increasingly diverse student body. So there are always and forever going to be opportunities to support our students through scholarships, through supporting them in their fieldwork experiences, and so on and so on. And I cannot thank the alumni enough and our friends at Stetson University enough for continuing to help us move this education forward, this stellar form of education forward. So again, that concludes the formal presentation of our evening, and now we get to the fun part, I think. I think the other stuff was fun too, but this is the fun part where Rena gets to hurl questions at me. Any ones that come up across the screen, we'd be happy to take them.
Excellent, very good. So folks, remember you can submit your questions in the chat box, and we will do our best to answer all the questions that are submitted before 7 o'clock our end time. Before we get started with this, I also wanted to mention that many of the photos you saw in the presentation were taken obviously pre-pandemic. So I just wanted to mention that. And then Dr. Roelke, before we get started, I want to share a really fun story I just got from one of our wonderful alumni in Chicago, and she's also a Hatter mom. Carol Ann Edwards Nasser just shared that her son Chase, who is studying remotely in Chicago, today started a study group, a socially distanced study group for students in Chicago. And so they got together in a coffee shop with their masks and were socially distanced, and they had a study group, and they're going to be getting together regularly from now on to have that camaraderie. And they've also started an online community as well. So I think that's a great story, Carolyn. Thank you so much for sharing that. It's beautiful. I love it. So, okay, so our first question that was sent in before the webinar tonight is, Dr. Roelke, please tell us a little bit about your family. How are they doing with your transition? And if you could just share a little bit about who they are with us.
Rena, thank you. And I know we only have a half hour. I could talk for the whole half hour about my family because I'm a very proud father of 3 amazing daughters. Emma is 26 years old and is a second-year medical student at NYU Long Island School of Medicine. Julia is 23 and is a second-year science educator and sustainability coordinator and basketball coach in Westport, Connecticut. And Olivia is a high school student, and she is an amazing equestrian, an amazing athlete, and also quite talented musically. She certainly did not get that from me. My wife, Kim, is a small animal veterinarian. We met in college at Wesleyan University as resident advisors, and we have been in higher education institutions ever since. So that's my family. We are separated at the moment because in part of the pandemic and in part also because my youngest daughter is finishing up high school in New York. but they will be here at Thanksgiving and be able to stay for a month and a half. And then again, we look forward to the full move down to DeLand at the end of the academic year.
Wonderful, very good. So with her being a veterinarian, do you have pets in your house?
We do. We have lots of pets. We have a lot of rescue animals. As you can imagine, when your spouse is involved in veterinary medicine, you end up with all sorts of creatures, and that's something that she and I share, is a really a love of animals. We have 2 dogs, a very severely visually impaired golden retriever, Marco, he's about a year old. Duke, who was a rescue from the Puerto Rico hurricane. We think he's a greyhound, maybe terrier mix, we're not sure. Very athletic, jet black, beautiful, wonderful dog. Really matches my youngest daughter's personality to a T. We have 2 cats, Mac and Millie, and we have a bunch of fish, and we have 2 horses that we own a quarter of one of the horses because we couldn't afford the whole horse. And then my wife has another horse as well, but they're boarded off of our property in the Hudson Valley. So lots and lots of pets, and there's always push for more, but I think that's enough for now.
Wonderful, thank you. So the next question that came in was, congratulations on the plan for opening school. It looked outstanding, but as we know, when plans get implemented, changes happen. What surprised you and had to be modified when students actually arrived, if anything?
That's a very good question. As I said in my opening remarks, we could not be more pleased with where we are right now, but we're also incredibly cautious because this thing, as you can, if you're following the news, can turn on a dime, and we could be back into a much more rampant positivity rate. I think a couple of things we learned. One, when we did isolation, I don't think we were fully prepared in the isolation to get students the food that they needed. And people have been working tirelessly, but again, we got food to them, but it wasn't necessarily always in the most timely fashion. So we had to tweak that very quickly to make sure that our students could be well fed, particularly those that were out in hotels, et cetera. I think the other thing that we've learned, and perhaps is a surprise to me as a lifelong educator who's been so deeply committed to face-to-face education, is frankly some of the benefits associated with our virtual worlds. It is imperfect. Our students are desperate to get back to more face-to-face, don't get me wrong. But we've also learned that some content can be delivered quite efficiently and effectively. Students can do learning on their own time as opposed to have to actually being physically in a space to get that content. I think our faculty are learning a tremendous amount through this. I think we're learning how to become more efficient with meetings. I will say, as your new president, I'm able to reach a lot of people quite quickly through these virtual worlds. And again, I so appreciate our alums and other friends engaging with us. And let me also say that our learning goes on every single day, right? So it's not as though we've learned it, now it's over. We're continuing to learn, and we're also learning that, we have to be nimble, because if a person does test positive in a particular class, the classmates may not feel particularly safe, the instructor may not feel particularly safe, so we gotta adapt to that situation until we know that it's safe to come back to face-to-face. The other thing I've learned, and it's a positive thing, is how much our community values the Stetson residential experience. It is not the same here without it, and we are so eager to get back to that. As much learning takes place at Stetson outside the classroom as inside the classroom, and we miss that terribly.
Absolutely. In many ways, it was like building an airplane while it was flying, wasn't it? Our team has been incredible. So that leads into the next question very well. How has the university been bridging the potential gap for students to build mentoring relationships with professors that may have been best developed from in-person instruction? Have there been any examples of innovation with that?
Sure, I think it varies from discipline to discipline, and frankly from faculty member to faculty member, and also on the student affairs side, depending on what the function is. I think we've had really good success in trying to keep our students engaged in virtual ways. Yes. Some of our alums have stepped up with virtual internships, for example. Very, very helpful to us. And if you're interested in doing that, please be in touch with us, because our students are eager to apply what it is they're learning into solving real world challenges and real world problems. That, which I think is at the core of a Stetson education, has in fact been limited because of COVID. You may recall that I mentioned the wonderful, stellar record that Stetson has with community-based learning. and bridging any perceived or real gaps between theory and practice. Well, that's been a real challenge this semester, and I thank those alums and others that have stepped up to provide virtual connectivity for our students. They really crave that. They appreciate it so much. And as we just talked about, it's not hard to do. So thank you so much for your contributions in that domain.
Yes, if any of you do want to learn about how you can help with internships, just type your information in the box and I'll get back with you. So thank you. All right. So you talked during your presentation about that the administration and faculty and community, you're making plans for the spring. What is the outlook for students returning to campus in the spring?
Sure. It's a great question. You may recall that I mentioned our webinars, and we hope to have closure on what the spring semester is going to look like at our webinar on October 22nd. We are smack in the middle of planning for that. Tremendous efforts being made by the Faculty Senate, by the provost, by our deans, by student leadership, et cetera. I will say this more generally, two things. One, we've been sort of thinking about this as a dial of instruction, right? On the one hand, it's all virtual, right? On the other hand, it's all face-to-face. We have been somewhere in the middle, and we are very eager to be able to provide more opportunities on the face-to-face front, if at all possible. Of course, that will be dictated by public health data. It will be dictated by our ability to continue to mitigate the transmission of this virus, and so on. So that's the one thing I would like to say in terms of the spring. We're also very hopeful that we'll be able to open up residentiality to more students. Again, all contingent upon public health data, but we have a number of our students that are so desperate to want to come back, and we just hope that we can do that and do that safely.
Absolutely, we miss them. So we have a shout out here. So Dean Bunch, who is Army 1969 through 71 and was in Vietnam in 1970 through 71. Thank you for your service. He says, congratulations to the College of Law, to their outstanding program providing pro bono services to veterans. Absolutely. Our Veterans Law Institute is unbelievable. And when they share those stories of how they have helped our veterans, there is not a dry eye in the room. Thank you for that comment. We really appreciate that.
Let me chime in on that too, if I could, Rena, because I fully agree. There are programs of distinction all over the place at Stetson, including at the College of Law, which is year after year ranked among the very top schools in legal writing and trial advocacy, and certainly in its veterans advocacy. Also in elder care. There are programs of distinction there in Gulfport that Stetson University should be very, very proud of. So again, thank you for your service, and also thank you for your comments.
Yes. We also have a question that came in this evening. What is the biggest difference that you have found between Vassar, where you served for a number of years, and Stetson?
A very generous question. Thank you. I have spent 21 years of my professional career at Vassar, an extraordinary institution. Like I am doing now, I lived on campus for the last decade in Poughkeepsie, New York, because I served as dean of the college there. There are many, many similarities, but let me start first with, I think, the differences. First, Vassar College is almost completely undergraduate. About 2,400 students, 98% of those students live on campus. So it really is classified as a highly competitive liberal arts institution. And again, only 2,400 students with, most of them living on or right near campus. We also used to pride ourselves on faculty living within a 2-mile radius of campus. I think that number has changed some, but very much a very intensive residential living and learning community. Stetson certainly has that intensity of the residential living and learning, but of course we have outstanding graduate programs as well, right? We also have a College of Law. We have a School of Business. We have a School of Music in addition to our College of Arts and Sciences. I think another difference, and frankly, a difference that really appealed to me about Stetson, is that Stetson is much more intentional about, again, bridging any perceived or real gaps between theory and practice. Stetson doesn't shy away from the career preparation components associated with the liberal arts education, and certainly don't shy away from it in the School of Business or the School of Music, and certainly not at the College of Law. As a former educator and a person that prepared teachers explicitly for their work in classrooms, I love that. I love that, particularly in the escalating cost environment of higher education. I think it's very important that we be intentional about providing our students with opportunities that will lead to gainful and meaningful employment after they graduate, or if they choose, prepare them adequately for graduate school. So I think those are some of the big differences. I'll share a couple more if you don't mind, because I think it's a great question. I think the socio-political context here in Central Florida is very different than the context at Vassar and in the Hudson Valley of New York. I actually find that also very energizing because there's a diversity of political opinion here in Central Florida that I think allows for much more robust educational opportunities. In my classroom teaching, I'm often fond of saying that one doesn't truly understand their own viewpoint unless they understand their opponent's viewpoint. Well, I think that we have that opportunity here at Stetson because of the socio-political diversity that is present on our campuses.
Awesome, thank you, thank you. We have another question here. Is the class of 2020, so last May, going to be able to participate in a graduation ceremony?
The answer is yes. And again, it's going to be done in a physically distant manner, but there was a survey done of our class of 2020. And of course, they so much want to come back on campus to celebrate their amazing achievements. So yes, information will be forthcoming very shortly about that. We're going to be dividing up those commencement ceremonies in very innovative and thoughtful ways so that it can be done safely. So please stay tuned on that. But yes, they will be celebrated, appropriately celebrated here in DeLand and at the College of Law.
Excellent, very good. So how can we as alumni best support your goals of the leadership team?
Oh, so nice. Well, I will say this, Stetson University enjoys an alumni body that is 42,000 strong, 42,000 strong. We will be celebrating our sesquicentennial in 2033. That may seem like farther down the road, but it's not that far down the road, right? Just a few short 13 years or so down the road. Despite having 42,000 alumni, we only reach out to and ask for support from about 26,000 of those alumni. So we're missing some. In addition, those that are engaged only engage at a 7% clip. Yep. Okay, so we know that you love Stetson. I love Stetson. Everybody on this virtual call loves Stetson. We've got to expand that engagement. We must do that, and we need your help to do that. So if you've got classmates that you're aware of that haven't been engaged with Stetson, it would be hugely helpful to us, not only for their voices, but also for their perspective, for their love of Stetson, and frankly, also to help us on the philanthropic front. There are, in fact, needs that we have philanthropically at Stetson, and thank goodness we'll be getting wonderful large gifts from a very small number of alumni, but we absolutely need to increase that participation rate among our alumni, 42,000 strong. So some of that work is on us. Why are we not reaching those other 17,000 or so? We got to find them. We got to engage with them, but we could use your help on engaging your friends and your classmates, your parent friends, and frankly, if your parents out there, developing a culture of philanthropy and a culture of engagement among your students. I think that's very, very important for the future of Stetson University.
Can you talk how that also affects the rankings? And I know that's a question that a lot of people have.
Sure. You know, certainly as higher education leaders, we don't want to be obsessed with rankings, but we certainly do pay attention to them. And I think alumni do as well, right? And Stetson used to enjoy the #1 spot of regional universities in the South. And we are now, I believe, ranked, just moved up a spot, by the way, just moved up a spot, and now we're now 4th. Part of that ranking methodology includes a couple of pieces that Stetson does need to work on. One is the aforementioned alumni giving rate. We are way behind our peers on the alumni giving rate. And the other is what we call the retention rate. That is, do we graduate a large percentage of our students once they enter? Stetson has made improvement in that area, but we need to do better, right? So when we admit a student, when we welcome a student to campus, we've got to eliminate any barriers that we possibly can to making sure that they can successfully complete their degree through Stetson. Absolutely. I think those are two critical priorities that will simultaneously help us in the rankings.
Absolutely, thank you. So a question that came in before our session tonight is, what do you see as the biggest threat to Stetson, and what are your thoughts to mitigate that threat? It's a good question.
It's a good question, and I probably won't be able to answer it adequately here, but I'll try to give it a shot. First, a highly competitive higher education landscape, highly competitive, and especially right here in Central Florida, where there are larger and frankly less expensive alternatives to the private education that Stetson University affords its students, right?
Yes.
So, University of Central Florida, for example, booming in terms of enrollment, right? So I think a huge challenge for Stetson moving forward is to make our programs of excellence better known, to broaden the footprint of Stetson's demographic. Right now, we have about 7.5, you can't have half a student, but 75% of our students come from the state of Florida. That's terrific. But if we want to, again, enhance Stetson's national reputation and also sustain Stetson's future, we must broaden Stetson University's geographic footprint. And I mean that especially domestically, but also internationally, right? We're fortunate in the sense that we are located in a part of the country where we do see demographic growth. There is not demographic growth happening in terms of college age going youth in the Northeast, nor in the Midwest, but in the Southeast region and out West, there is in fact demographic growth. So I'd like to see us create a market niche more broadly across the United States, and also strategic partners internationally. I think that's absolutely in Stetson's best interest to move forward. Another threat, I think, to Stetson's longer term sustainability is on a per pupil basis, although we should be very proud of our $300+ million endowment, it is not near where it needs to be in terms of endowment per pupil. Again, we lag behind our peers. Now, why is that important? It's not because we want to say we have a large endowment. It's because that secures a Stetson education for future generations of students, right? In addition,
Absolutely.
when you have a global pandemic and you have a modest endowment, you have less wiggle room to be able to navigate in really smart and innovative ways, and frankly, limited resources in which to capitalize on such an emergency environment. I'm delighted to report that the Board of Trustees were able to allow us to draw 6.1% from our endowment this year in order to balance our budget, despite those budget cuts. That was very generous of the board, but that is not a sustainable number either. It must be between 4.5% and 5% if we're serious about preserving this outstanding education for future Stetson students. So that kind of gives you a nutshell, I think, of some of our challenges that are on the macro level. We certainly have some internal things to think about in terms of our physical plant. We have some aging buildings. It's an 1883 campus. I've lived this life at Vassar, which was founded in 1863. We want to make sure our buildings are universal design, that we can have people with handicapping conditions be able to access our buildings. We've got to make sure our fire suppression equipment is first rate and up to code. So the needs are vast, but the big ones, I think, are in fact creating a market niche for Stetson that goes beyond Florida.
Very good, thank you. And this evening on this call, we have a number of our parents and alumni who serve on our boards in the central time zone. So they're helping us get the word out in that area where there's some really good cultural match between that part of the country and Stetson. And also parents and alumni who are hosting admission events for us. So I really love that you talked about that. So we have another really good question that's come in. This person says, I was really encouraged to hear about how Stetson gave both faculty and students agency in terms of classes this fall, and how you're involving faculty in decision-making about the spring semester. How else are you going to go about building rapport and a sense of collegiality with the faculty? What are some of the ways you have been getting to know them as people and hear their ideas? It's a great question.
It is a great question, and I'm also very fortunate to be serving as a faculty member at Stetson in American Studies and in education. So in some ways, that's been quite helpful early on here. I have offered to have a weekly conversation with the Faculty Senate Chair. That offer has been very well received, and the conversations we've had have been robust, candid, thoughtful, collegial, and I think, frankly, very, very helpful. I think a big part of my answer to this question frankly centers on the notion of two things: communication and transparency. So I've been describing the need at Stetson for us to open up the highways of communication across various constituencies, including the faculty. So I meet with the Faculty Senate Executive at least twice a month. I meet with the full Faculty Senate regularly. I encourage all of our deans and provosts, et cetera, all of our senior leadership to make sure that they're connecting with faculty on a regular basis. The faculty and our students are the heart and soul of Stetson. That's where the rubber hits the road. And we need to hear what's on their mind. We need to hear their ideas. And I also saw in the question, thank you very, very much for noting this, that when we chose to give students and faculty agency, what a relief that was for our faculty, right? Because what we were trying to do there was to unleash the creativity of the faculty in an unprecedented context. And that's exactly what has taken place, right? So they know best how to teach their discipline under these trying circumstances, right? They know best how they can try to reach their students and keep them engaged despite the need to be physically distant. So my early vibe on this, and again, it's a vibe, that's not an official word, that's just the word vibe. My vibe on this is that we're making considerable progress with regard to the communication front. And the other word I said was transparency. I know it's a word that gets thrown out there a lot these days, but what I mean by that is that when decisions are made, and sometimes they're difficult ones, providing the community very transparently and honestly and openly the rationale for that decision, right? So in a higher education environment, we got lots of people with lots of different ideas, and oftentimes they're divergent.
Mm-hmm.
So allowing for those divergent ideas to come to the forefront, making a decision, hopefully collaboratively if possible, and then explaining the rationale behind that decision. That is a labor-intensive responsibility for your new president, but it's one that I think is absolutely essential to build notions of community.
Absolutely. And I have many dear faculty friends, and I'm happy to report they love your open leadership style. It's very, very welcome and refreshing, and they're excited about you being here. Okay,
well,
we have
the honeymoon's going to last a long time. I'm telling you, it's going to last a long time. I'm only in my 100th day. We're going to spread it out.
Excellent. Okay, so we are right at 8 o'clock. We have one last question for you, Dr. Roelke. So when you have some free time, if you have any, how are you staying well, and what do you do for fun?
Very generous question. Lots of generous questions tonight. Thank you.
Yes.
First, I think what's keeping me well is the fact that I am truly, truly energized by this challenge. I've been fond of saying to the community that, there's no better place to be than in higher education when you're confronted with the set of challenges like we're being confronted with, and no better place than Stetson University. Why? Because you got a lot of smart, dedicated, talented people thinking through these challenges together. So I think I'm staying well in part because I'm really energized by the challenges that we are confronting. I feel very welcomed here at Stetson. Everyone has been incredibly generous with their time, their energy, and their insight. And being a lifelong educator, that's where the rubber hits the road. If you got people around the table that are wanting to make a difference in the human condition, I can imagine no better place to be than at that table. So that's been great. What I typically like to do for fun is typically something athletic, competitive. I did play competitive athletics in college, basketball and baseball. Some of those activities certainly have not been possible during COVID-19, but I do try to make a daily walk downtown DeLand because I think it's also important that I make myself visible to local area partners. So I'm happy, I'm well, I'm honored and privileged to be serving as Stetson's 10th president. And again, go Hatters is all I can say.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Dr. Roelke. It was a pleasure being with you here tonight. And thank you to all of our Hatters out there, Central Time Zone. We love you. We appreciate you, and have a great night. Go Hatters.